This is Rally Round the Cannon, some thoughts on Princeton's history by somebody who should know better. One of the few irksome aspects of hanging out here at History Central is that, despite our zippy digital trappings, casual readers seem to feel we're a bit out of touch with cutting-edge developments like tweets and indoor plumbing. Nothing could be further from the truth except maybe the platforms of the major political parties. Take the royal wedding, for example. We're just as breathlessly distracted by the pomp and glitter as anybody else among the paparazzi, and just as eager to bring you all the tasty tidbits regarding the happy couple and their magical adventures. Of course, in our case, it's George III and Princess Charlotte who got hitched in 1761. But when you think about it, this gives us a huge advantage in that we can gossip pretty convincingly about their 15 kids and his spotty prospects, both in the realms of mental health. You should definitely see the fine film The Madness of King George. And his North American land holdings, which took a hit with some enthusiastic help from Old Nassau in 1776. But today, we note their wedding and the other tasty morsels from precisely 250 years ago in 1761, and focus on a Wayback Machine in which you can travel there and take a look around. It was a different world, and then some. No democracies, no electricity, no Alumni Weekly, but there were plenty of slavery, disease, and fancy dress royals. The French and Indian Wars were rolling along in the American interior, giving George Washington some military training, which would later prove useful. In the arts, the Baroque was about to give way. Handel had been dead for 2 years. Gluck was finishing Orfeo et Eurydice. And Mozart was a wildly precocious 5-year-old who was already composing. Thomas Jefferson was a junior at William and Mary. Now, what is this Wayback Machine? Well, our good friends in the university archives have put a nice selection of old trustees' minutes online, and we call your attention to them as a way to access and consider this alternate universe. For fun today, we go back to 1761 and take a look around. Of course, including the term trustees and fun in the same sentence might seem a reach, but you have to understand that even today, these are folks who take pleasure in their sizable volunteer labors, and over the centuries have gotten pretty darn good at such skills as Gothic design, fundraising, investments, and landscaping. Their 1761 predecessors applied themselves similarly, as we will see. The first item in the minutes is a bow to the communication and travel limitations of the day. The trustees couldn't raise a quorum on May 20th, so they had to reschedule for June 1st, 1761. This was not lightly done, as we can tell from the pressing main order of business: electing a new president. Nassau Hall, then occupied for just 5 years, had not proven hospitable to authority. 3 presidents had rapidly died in that time, and the board was going for 4. Aaron Burr Sr., who had unexpectedly picked up the mantle in Newark in 1748 and overseen the Second College Charter, the construction of Nassau Hall, and the move to Princeton, died 1 year after that in 1757, only 41 years old and exhausted. The trustees then did their part for medical history, although not for the Enlightenment, by inoculating at his inauguration the great Jonathan Edwards, voice of the New Lights, against smallpox, of which he immediately died in 1758. After next electing New Light hymnist and preacher Samuel Davies, it took them a year to convince him to come. This showed insight on his part. 18 months after finally acceding to Princeton, he was bled for a bad cold and died of pneumonia at age 37. 5 weeks earlier, he had preached on Jeremiah 28:16. This year, thou shalt die. So by June 1st, 1761, the trustees had to focus on a new target leader. Finally, putting together a 13-member quorum, they elected Samuel Finley, one of their own, who had been trained at the famed Enlightenment hotspot, the Log College in Neshaminy, Pennsylvania, by William Tennant Sr. Finley had ironically been the late Davies' emphatic choice as the best new light guide for the college, renowned as a teacher as well as a preacher. He, quote, was pleased modestly to accept the same, unquote, although why under the circumstances was an answer only known to him and his physician, presumably not a trustee. For his risk, Finley got £200 per year plus relocation expenses. Elsewhere in the minutes, we find the unoccupied interim had not gone well at what is today McLean House. The trustees, quote, do strictly forbid persons belonging to the college playing at ball against the said president's house, unquote. The fine was 5 shillings. The following meeting was September 30th, 1761, at commencement, with Finley present. In addition to the 14 graduating seniors, the board voted 3 master's degrees, including one to trustee and Finley's fellow Log College alum William Tennant Jr. The board cited the ongoing lottery in Philadelphia for the benefit of the college. Remember the fundraising part? And directed the immediate investment of the proceeds. Remember the investing part? Students also were periodically weaseling out of tuition payments at school year's end, so the trustees decided if they didn't pay at the beginning, they had to post bond, sort of an in loco carcerensis clause. Fees, by the way, were set at £25 6 shillings per term, including £2 for firewood and candles, perhaps $13,000 or so per year in today's money. Although, keep in mind, the food was Spartan, the pump and the outhouse were out, and daily chapel was a requirement. Finley, as it turns out, outlasted his 3 predecessors combined in Nassau Hall, a total of 5 years. The college grew and graduated 130 students in his time, including the founders of Brown and Hamilton colleges, a New Jersey governor, and a Supreme Court justice, foreshadowing many secular student and alumni adventures to come. Finley's academic credentials were so impressive that in 1763 he became only the 2nd American awarded an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree in the British Isles from the University of Glasgow. This set the stage in Princeton for his game-changing successor, Reverend Dr. John Witherspoon from Paisley. But before the taxing presidency finally finished him at the advanced age of 51, Finley took great pleasure in planting numbers of trees around the college grounds. The last 2 were sycamores, dedicated by the trustees, remember the landscaping, in honor of the repeal of the Stamp Act in 1766 in front of the President's house on Nassau Street, where you can see them today. So we find in the trustees' minutes that a quarter millennium ago things were really getting perking around the new Nassau Hall, pointing toward the college's future contributions to the not yet a country. Of course, only 15 years later, it would become ground zero in actually establishing the United States, as the British and Americans fought around it and for it. And exactly 100 years after that, it would see the dissembling of that country, and very likely the most wrenching period in its life. Next time, we'll look at 1861 and the onset of the Civil War. Yours in virtual orange and black, this is Greg Lang of the Great Class of 1970. Rally Round the Cannon is a podcast from the Princeton Alumni Weekly online.